Welcome to the 2022 Nautilus Book Awards Author Spotlight Series. I'm your host, Christine Upchurch. Now celebrating 22 years of honoring better books for a better world, Nautilus Book Awards continues to embrace books from a wide spectrum in the publishing industry. Books which radiate hope and wisdom. Books which nurture our inner connection and inspire us to connect with others as individuals, as communities, and as planetary citizens. This is a vast conversation, one which is more crucial today than ever before. Today, we are focusing the spotlight on author Rick Nichols, who has won a Silver Award for his book entitled Love Will Lead Us Home, Your Guide for the Journey. He's won in the category of Inner Prosperity and Right Livelihood. Rick Nichols is a self-proclaimed teacher of love. He's internationally known in personal development as an author, a speaker, and trainer. He has deeply touched many lives across the world over, and he has an ability to decipher the messages between the lines in stories, both old and new. Rick, it's so great to have you here. Congratulations on your Silver Award. And thank you for joining me here today.
It's absolutely my pleasure, Christine. It's a joy to be here with you and to share my thoughts and ideas about my book with you, and indeed later on, much more of the world. Thanks you so much.
Yeah. And again, the book is entitled Love Will Lead Us Home, Your Guide for the Journey. And speaking of journeys, you share a lot about your own personal journey. And you also talk about Joseph Campbell, who talked a lot about the hero's journey. And in any hero's journey, there is always an initiation. It's not always fun, mind you, but there is an initiation. Can you share with our viewers today a little bit about your initiation?
Sure can. My initiation coming onto the planet was topsy-turvy. My mother and father split somehow before I was born. So I was born kind of half an orphan and never knew my natural father. In fact, her father was gone, and so I had no grandfathers, no male images that I could look up to. And so that was bad, and my mother attracted unpleasant people into her life, so that just made my upbringing kind of rough. So I never got to straighten myself out until I left and joined the Navy. And one day a naval NCO said to me, I've been watching you. You're pretty smart. You do things good. And I'm going, me? So I got the first time that I ever had anybody tell me that I'd done anything right. And I was very fortunate to acquire some delightful mentors, not only in the Navy, but in business life after I left the Navy. So I had to go out into the world. It's scary in this case, because since I had no sense of self-worth, it was frightening to go into the world and be wrong all the time. So the thing is, you want to be quiet, stay out of the way. But I eventually learned that I didn't need to do that, and I learned self-respect and indeed finally self-love. So yes, it's difficult, but you have to step out there to make it happen. And usually providence or creation will send you guides and helpers, either seen or unseen, to guide you away if you're willing to go with them.
So you talk about getting the external validation of your worth. Is that all there is to the journey, or is there more in order to find self-value?
Well, you can't find the self-value until you discover the parts of you that you think are missing or wrong. And you can't often do that by yourself. Some people can, but usually it comes from validation. Because what happens if I think that I'm wrong all the time, and then I'm afraid to open up and talk in the world, then because people will reject me and slap me down, which is what happened to me earlier on. I had a lot of bullying and stuff, and so there's a fear of doing that. So what happens? You say to yourself, "I'm just going to be quiet because nobody's going to like what I say." It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Right? Nobody listens to you because you don't believe they should listen to you, and you don't say anything until you begin to make a point until you begin to state your opinion. And then slowly people will start listening and say, hey, you're pretty smart. I like your ideas. But it's a pretty spooky road along the way to get to that point, but you'll get there.
So what do you think some of the keys to your transformation were beyond the mentorship?
The big keys of my transformation, one day I woke up and I said, I need to change my life. And I've done that several times. And guess what? My life didn't change. I thought I was doing things to change it, but it didn't change. But this time I was serious. And through a process of serendipity and so forth, I come across a book called You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. And sometimes I get things right. And I picked up that book and decided I was going to read the book cover to cover and get what it had to say. Well, I wound up developing a relationship with the book. And like most relationships, I would go to it often, and then I would do the exercises in there. I would spend quality time with the book, and by extension, Louise Hay, who was brilliant. And there was where the doors began to open. And through that whole process, I brought myself out of a state of homelessness, not rags and gutters homelessness, but not having my own home for 3 years and relying on other people to help me through. And I learned a process through Louise's book, a way to do affirmations that completely transformed my life to be exactly as it is now, living the delightful life I live, teaching people all over the world these principles.
Mm. Yeah, she was a very powerful woman who brought wisdom to millions.
Yes.
And including my own life. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
so
very well.
One of the things that you talk about in your book is the importance of looking at our shadow. And clearly you had plenty of shadow that was created from your upbringing and the dysfunction in your home. What role does the shadow play in our transformation?
The role it plays in our transformation is it sets itself up to be forgiven. Forgiveness is what cures it. Now, in the story in the book, I use the story of the Wizard of Oz, a metaphor of all the characters in the Wizard of Oz, of which there are 8 main characters. And each one of those 8 main characters represent, in my metaphor, the chakra systems, if you know what they are. And the Wicked Witch is a root chakra, and the wizard is the second chakra, the ego. And then we have the lion, he's the third, and he's the fear. And then we have the Tin Man, he's a fearful heart. And we have the Straw Man, which is fearful wisdom. And Toto, which is intuition. Dorothy, which is the persona of the body, the owner of the body. And then the Good Witch, which is the spirit, the guiding spirit, you call it an angel or whatever you want to call it. I call it the Holy Spirit. And the Wicked Witch sets up the whole problem, because the Wicked Witch is the part of Dorothy and a part of all of us that thinks that we are filled with sin and shame and guilt, because we have been told that since the day of our birth by many levels of authority, that you're sinful and that you're guilty and you're shameful. And as we go through life, it gets to be confirmed, because we make mistakes and people say, you're always doing things wrong, aren't you? We pick up all of these negative beliefs about ourselves, and that forms the shadow. And the shadow, the Wicked Witch, is always after Dorothy. Now, Glinda the Good Witch never gets in the way, but the shadow is always after her. I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too. And so she is the one that needs to be reckoned with on this hero's journey. And Dorothy, I believe, the way I like to see it is that she was having a near-death experience, that when the window blew in on the house, hit her in the head, and she fell down on the bed, she immediately went into an NDE, a near-death experience, in which she was just delightfully taken to this wonderful place, the Land of Oz, that wasn't quite so pleasant. And she met herself. She finally got to see Dorothy, and she saw Dorothy as the Wicked Witch, the sin and shame and guilt, and as the wizard, who do you think you are? You don't deserve what you're looking for, and all of that. And then she saw herself as the the lion who's afraid of everything, and then the tin man who's got a fearful heart, straw man who is he's wise and wisdom, but he doesn't believe it, he doesn't know it, he doubts that. And Toto, who is her intuition, who's doubting himself. Because of the fear down below, the fear that comes from the wicked witch just rises up like through a chimney and taints everything else in the body and in the mind to skew it over to the negative side. Dorothy, as she goes through the story and gets to the end of it, finally, what does she do? She mistakenly or accidentally, if you will, splashed water on the wicked witch, and guess what? She melted. There goes the sin and shame and guilt that Dorothy had. And I see that as the forgiveness, the cleansing. You can look at a religious point of view, baptism. Baptism is supposed to free us of our sin and shame and guilt. So Dorothy splashes water on the wicked witch, and she simply can't take it, and she melts. And in that moment, Dorothy gets the broomstick, and she goes back to the wizard to prove that she's killed the wicked witch. But what the wizard doesn't know is Dorothy is the only person in that room with any power whatsoever. He has been dethroned, and he's not even aware of it yet, but he finds out very quickly. And once he's dethroned, now you've dethroned the ego. You don't kill him, and you don't smash him or anything. But what you do is you dethrone him. He is no longer in charge, and he becomes a beneficent little old man who's happy to give you what you need to see your way through life. I don't believe the ego needs to be gotten rid of. I think it just needs to be tamed down. It doesn't take much but a little bit of looking around the world to see many egos completely out of control.
I love the fact that you use that story as an allegory and connect it to the chakras. It's profound. Right. Could you please read a section from your book?
Sure. Just happen to have a book here. Okay, so this section is on page 60, and it's called The Journey Starts Here. It's where I begin the journey of self-discovery, not only for us, the readers, but for Dorothy, and we learned this through Dorothy. It says, I'll take a moment here to set the stage before we begin our hero's journey. I do not intend to recall or to retell the story of the Wizard of Oz. My intention is for us to travel along with Dorothy in a very intimate and personal way. By that, I mean for us to experience the adventure as though we are with Dorothy. What is happening here is Dorothy is a reflection of what is happening with us. The extent to which we can release to Dorothy will determine how much we can discover about ourselves through this adventure. You see, Dorothy is on a journey of self-discovery. It's not an external journey through the land of Oz. It's all within Dorothy. It's all within her psyche in this near-death experience. And when she goes to the land of Oz on a cyclone, tornado, she is spinning so much that she gets dismembered. And so pieces and parts of Dorothy are scattered all across the land of Oz. And she sets out on this journey to go and find them. And she discovers that all of these wounded parts of herself, her shadows, and then the wizard, her ego, and so forth, are all very lovable and all very kind and all have value and all have worth. They just don't know it. They're not aware of it. And Dorothy never once criticizes them in any way. She embraces them. So, well, yes, of course, you come with me to see the wizard, and maybe you can get a brain or a heart, or, whatever it is you need. And that's how Dorothy reassembled herself after this trip to the journey. And then the near-death experience is over when she goes back to Kansas. Says, Auntie, I love you. I love that. Everything here is right. There's no place like home.
So, Rick, as we go about our own individual journeys, why is it important for us to learn the power and embrace the power of letting go?
That's the point of the book. We have got to, if this planet is to survive, learn to love and respect each other. There is a love that's way beyond the love we experience in our romantic ideas of things. There is a love which is love, which is the universe. And when you experience this a few times, you will know what it is, and it will bring tears to your eyes. Once you know it, unfortunately, it doesn't stay with you a long time after that, because that would be crippling. But you know it. You've experienced it. And when you experience it, you say, this is how things should be, in this state of love. First time I saw the Taj Mahal, believe it or not, I went through this gate, the people all around, and all of a sudden, there it was before me. I'd seen pictures and videos and whatever of the Taj Mahal all along. And I stepped through that thing, and this, boom, just all of it disappeared. It was a sense of extreme love, not for the building, but the fact that all of these people, and there were hundreds of them all around, and the building itself, were all one thing. I was actually unified with that. And I understood clearly in that moment what unity means, how, if anything, anyone on the planet is suffering, everyone on the planet is suffering. And it is that kind of love, and I've experienced that with many people since then too, but that's the love that will lead us home. That understanding that we're all one, we're not separate people. And my prayer is that everybody will have an opportunity to experience that level of love. And then you will know what the answer is. And it won't be another war. It won't be more weapons. It won't be more bickering and fighting. It'll be saying, I love you. And I learned through that experience to boldly and bravely and just quite naturally say, I love you, Christine, and mean it. And say that to, people in the supermarkets and stuff. I don't do it too often because it scares them.
and by the way, Rick, I love you too. And I witness, appreciate you and what you are bringing through your teachings in this book. And got one final question for you. In your book, you talk about the personal journey as being an adventure. I know many people struggle in a variety of ways. How is our own journey an adventure?
Well, so how do you define adventure? Adventure usually involves going someplace you haven't been before. It involves the unknown. It involves some fear. It involves excitement, and it involves a desire to go and experience something new, whatever that is that appeals to you. Some people like to go on adventures to discover new species of animals and other ideas of life and what have you. So an adventure is something that you're going willingly into, knowing that there are hazards and knowing that it's very exciting. And when you think about it, when we enter the planet, when we come through the birth canal and we drop out there on that stainless steel table or straw bed or whatever it happens to be, we're on a new adventure. And we have a whole life in front of us. And the quicker we learn how to accept life the way it rolls out and to make the best of things, is the better off we'll be. Like right towards the end of my book, I paraphrase the hymn, Amazing Grace. And I say that 'tis love has brought us safe thus far, and love will lead us home. And I've taken the word grace and replaced it with love. And if you know the backstory of Amazing Grace, you'll see what I mean with that. And I think it will happen. I don't know that we'll be able to make it happen, but I think it's just going to happen.
Very inspirational, Rick. Again, the book is Love Will Lead Us Home, Your Guide for the Journey. Rick, congratulations again on your Silver Award, and thank you so much for joining me in this insightful conversation.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.